Okay, so let me share my screen. If I can. Okay, let's go to the beginning. Okay, so the topic was meetings with remarkable teachers, what I learned in Egypt. And those of you who know Gurdjieff will know that he wrote a book called Meetings with Remarkable Men. And that was where he spoke about some of the amazing things he learned from these mystics in various places. And I had such an incredible time in Egypt, a lot of it traveling with Robert Hutchinson, who is not here today, but I wish he were, because he is someone who's able to read hieroglyphics and gave me so much access to what was going on in those temples. So a lot of life-changing, illuminating insights there. And then there were some really great teachers at the conference itself. So I thought I'd just feed back on some of the things that really struck me and really stayed with me. And what I'm picking up generally about new currents in Enneagram teaching. And yeah, just some kind of life-changing illuminations. So it's not going to be show and tell of travel pics. I realized afterwards I didn't have one single travel pic, and I thought that's very much a head type thing. I'm going to, be sharing all about these cosmological insights, and I could have actually included a picture or two. But yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about that. And I was going to start with what I call the spiritual stuff, but I actually changed my mind, and I want to start with something that I learned at a session with a management consultant who works with the Enneagram, and his name is Islam Abu Kandil. And he gave a really, really interesting session about the flow state. And he brought together systems theory and the Enneagram and the kind of psychology of flow. And this was the kind of summary takeaway of his session, which I found quite helpful. And if you don't come from a management consulting background where you eat, breathe, drink, and sleep 2x2 matrices, what this matrix is talking about here is that the flow state is a function of a very high level of intention and a very low level of attachment. And that I found quite a good and pertinent insight, that when we have low attachment to a very specific outcome, but we have a high intention, and intention is something that specifically in Islam itself is something that is set in the heart, and that we'll see potentially a little bit later if we get there, how that's common to most psychospiritual traditions, is that intention is something that you set in the heart. So if you arrive with a certain intention coming from deep within you, but a low attachment to the actual outcome, you can drop into a flow state. Whereas if you have any other combination, so say you've got high attachment to a specific outcome and low clarity of inner intention, you end up in a state of despair. And if you've got a low intention and a low attachment, you basically don't care. You're indifferent. So ideally, the state that he was talking about, using the Enneagram to help us kind of look at ourselves and know where we're at, is, do I have a high level of intention coming from the heart about where I want to come from and what I'm doing and where I'm coming from in myself, as well as a real non-attachment to outcome? Then we're much more likely to get into the flow state. And he broke it down into various positive inputs that can lead to a better state and various negative inputs that can lead to the lower state and a kind of downward spiral. He didn't put all these things in the boxes on the right. I was just doing that during his session, kind of linking it to the other stuff that I know. But he was saying that basically the beginning of getting into a positive cycle is the intention setting. And then there are various factors that amplify the positive, whether it's your attitudes, then the positive feelings and the positive behaviors that lead to a better and better outcome. Versus if you start going down the lines, you go into your instinctual preoccupation, your blind instincts, and then you start doubling down on your type. And that's one of the things that I've been finding quite interesting as well in my study of the Enneagram levels of development, is that as we drop down the levels, we start doubling down on our type. Rather than seeing this isn't working out that well, and maybe I should do something different, we start doing more of our type, which leads to a worse outcome. So I found his way of depicting it quite helpful. And then specifically the synthesis of attachment and intention. So I think that's something helpful that we can take away, is to be able to look at ourselves in whatever situation we're in and examine, what is my intention? What am I driven by? Am I driven by a compulsion in this situation? What is actually driving me? What am I trying to do? What am I trying to solve? And if we're looking for positive regard, for example, in our identity and in our image, if our intention is to earn positive regard, then we are coming from a place of not a very pure intention in Enneagram terms. It's an ego intention. And if we have a high attachment to the specific outcome associated with that, then we are not going to be in the flow state. We're going to be feeling quite desperate. So if you look at the low intention, doesn't mean that we don't really want it to happen. That's more attachment. If we've got a high attachment to getting positive regard, and our intention comes from a place inside us that is very ego-driven, then we're going to feel an intensity of either despair or stress, or we're going to feel indifference. Whereas if we're clear about where we're coming from, and we have a low attachment to an outcome, we're going to experience a state of flow. So I found that quite handy, and I saw the application. He spoke a bit about it in his corporate work and in coaching. And I think also the important part of what he was saying is around intention kind of being the kicker for the positive spiral, that we can really self-examine using our inner witness, using the inner observer to explore our heart and know, what is it that I'm trying to achieve here? What is the intention that I'm living out in this moment? So that's something that's quite helpful. And another thing there around the doubling down on the time, I think is very helpful to know. And we can notice it, like when we feel insecure, we usually do more of our type instead of less. So that was something that I found quite helpful. I've got a ton of half-baked notes from other sessions, but what I want to take you into is some of the more spiritual learnings from being there, from different teachers and from the actual traveling around, and give you just a little taste of some of the things that are illuminated by that place. And it's very difficult to put into words. It's so incredible. So this was another thing that one of the teachers there said. Dr. Abdul-Hai Holdek is a homeopath and doctor, and he's also a Sufi sheikh. And one of the things he said during one of his talks was a quote from one of the hadiths, he said, the ways to God are as numerous as the breaths of living beings. And I think that's something that it really struck me. And, you know, we hear these kinds of things quite often in this inner work, is that there's so many ways up the mountain, and there's so many different ways of experiencing more expanded states of awareness. But the way that he said it, and the way that this quote is, just gave me a new realization of the way in which our particular way of experiencing ourselves is our spiritual path. And that was something that I really got out of being in Egypt this time, was that this inner journey is very much about experiencing yourself. That the closer you can get to experiencing your experience, the closer you can get to actually being aware and alive in this moment, in contact with the reality of your own life. That is your spiritual path. That it's not some kind of inner journey into an inner mystery that you've got to dig up necessarily, which I think was how I thought about it for a long time, is going into these realms of the unconscious themselves. But it's more about actually making contact with yourself as a living entity. And that was something that kept on getting enhanced in my experience there. So with Robert and I going around, we were really focused on the 3 centers of intelligence. And that's where my teaching is becoming more and more and more focused on the primary types. So these 3 centers of intelligence are such a brilliant way to teach the Enneagram and to coach with it and to introduce it to people, because it's kind of the most obvious thing. And sometimes it's the thing that we discover so late in our Enneagram journey, that we are 3-centered beings. When we learn the Enneagram, we learn about the 9 types and the lines and the this and the that. But very seldom in our Enneagram teaching does the first teacher emphasize, as you stand here right now in front of me, you are an intelligence. You are a being of conscious intelligence. And in that being, you have different faculties of awareness. And the more we learn about neurophysiology, and the more we learn, about interpersonal neurobiology and trauma, the more we discover that we do have 3 centers of intelligence. We've got the cranial brain, we've got the cardiac brain, and we've got what's called the enteric brain, which is in the gut. And when we teach the Enneagram in this way, it lands so much better. And I'm finding this with my clients as well, is explaining what the Enneagram is to people in a corporate setting. What is the Enneagram? The Enneagram is a way of understanding how we are in our bodies on this earth, in our awareness, in our 3 centers of intelligence, and how we relate to one another. So we've got awareness and consciousness. We've got a heart, which longs for connection and belonging and safety and love. And we've got our body, which is our movement center, which is how we get around and do anything in this world, how we make an impact, how we make anything happen, how we manipulate the world, manipulate coming from the metaphor for hands, man. So we've got the head, the heart, the gut, and the hands. Hands as part of the body center. And this is so much part of the Egyptian teachings and of the temples and of the design of, say, the temple of man, the temple of the human being. All of the teachings in Egypt echo this teaching of us being 3-centered intelligences, and then explore the nature of these different intelligences. So I found the more that I become aware of this, the nature of the inner triangle, the nature of us as three-centered beings, I find the better my teaching becomes, the better my coaching becomes, and the more high impact my work in corporates becomes. Because then we're able to say to the clients, each of us has an awareness in our heads, and we can use that in different ways, which are the three head center types. Each of us has a heart, and in our heart, it's where we have feelings, and it's where we have relationships. And we have different ways of having relationships with one another, and we have different relationships to our own feelings themselves. We have different relationships to our own heart. And those are the three centers of intelligence in the heart center. And then when it comes to the body center and to getting things done and to our autonomy and our agency and our power, we've got three different ways of doing that. We've got three different ways of taking control. We've got three different ways of making sure that we aren't controlled. So this three-centered being, for me, is just becoming deeper and deeper and deeper as the absolute core of the Enneagram. And that everything is a differentiation around the inner triangle. So when we speak about the primary types, that's exactly what they are. And these three primary types are conflicted with their center, most out of touch with it, but they describe the kind of archetypal challenge of that center, is how to be in touch with your power at 9, how to be in touch with your agency. What is right action? What does it mean to be here on earth? That's the question of 9. Is what does it mean to be here on earth in a body with power, autonomy, and agency? And so what? So that question is expressed in different ways by 1 and 8, but the core question resides in the 9. And then the core question in 3, what does it mean to be a being with a heart? And what is the heart? What is the function of the heart center? And 3 being the center of the image center, the 2, 3, and 4 called the image center. What is my true identity? What am I really, really in my true being? And how do I become true to myself? In ancient Egyptian, they spoke, I don't know how many of you were at the session that Robert and I did on a discovery session on a workshop that we're going to be running called True of Voice. But in ancient Egypt, there was an accolade. And if somebody was held in the highest possible esteem when they passed away, they were said to be a person of true voice. And this question, true of voice, macheru means true of voice. You can only become true of voice if you know yourself in your heart. And one of the things that I've learned through my work with Robert and through my exploration of these ancient Egyptian teachings through him is that the Socratic dictum, know thyself, was originally from ancient Egypt. And it wasn't know thyself. It was, I know myself in my heart. Can you hear the difference? Can you hear the difference? Like if you put your hands on your heart right now and you say, I know myself in my heart, what happens to you? Just try it. Just try it. Take a moment, put your hands across your chest like that, like those ancient Egyptian statues, holding the ankh, which is the symbol of life, and say to yourself, I know myself in my heart. So I don't know about you when you do that, but when I do that, I get a kind of wave of recognition grief. That's what we call it in marriage counseling. When I trained in Imago, they spoke about recognition grief, which is the grief of recognizing oneself and that you've kind of been an exile to yourself in a way. It's the tears that you would cry when your most beloved person arrives at the airport and come through the doors and you run to meet them. It's the kind of tears of joy, but also the tears of not even knowing how much you missed somebody. And when we say, I know myself in my heart, I think there's a part of us that knows that we don't know ourselves in our heart, or that we even forgot to look, or we even forgot there is a somebody to know in the heart. And this is the question then. The heart as the center of our identity and where we really live. So the challenge of the Enneagram 3 point on the Enneagram as the center of the identity center, the center of the image center, is who am I relative to my image of myself? So here you see there was a little dude on this picture, and I copied him and I made a copy of him, you see, because there's the him and there's his image. And we have an image of ourselves that stops us from knowing who we really are. It stops us from experiencing ourselves as we really are. And if we're going to be alive, if we're going to grow, if we're going to let life touch us, then we need to get in touch with that deepest part of ourselves that has got nothing to do with our image, that has got to do with our true voice. So what's amazing about Egypt is that the places teach the wisdom associated with these questions. The places are what Robert describes them as living universities. So, for example, if we start speaking about the head center and awareness and consciousness, this is the temple at Karnak, and it's called the Temple of the Gods. And it is indescribably magnificent. It's massive. And this temple is the temple of consciousness. It's got a whole precinct of different temples, but included in it is the temple of Amun-Re, who's the kind of light of awareness in the Egyptian pantheon. So we're talking about consciousness itself. And then you've also got here the temple of Mut, who's the temple of the kind of primordial being from which things arose, like the primal mother. So you've got these really beautiful archetypal, you can call them metaphors, you can call them archetypes, symbols, names for different principles of reality. But the way that they laid out there enables you to appreciate the reality of like a ray of illumination as consciousness, the arising of being from this kind of primordial matter. And it kind of, my experience of it was that it takes things, well, for me, you know, having been immersed in Christianity and Sufism and Kabbalah, Judaism, lots of different spiritual traditions for my whole life, being there, it brought them to life in a new way and in an embodied way. And I was blown away by the way in which it suddenly became true that we are a three-centered being with an illumination of a ray of awareness in our consciousness, with a heart that experiences true value, with a body that is part of the earth, that is totally embedded in the material world and in all the laws of nature. So what I want to do now is I want to just share a picture with you of the temple of Amun-Re, where there's actually a a 3D photograph of this thing that you can see. Are you seeing my screen? So this, no photograph that I could take could do this place justice. So this is the temple of consciousness. They made a temple to the gods. They made a temple to the creation of the universe. And they knew that it had to be this massive and this absolutely overwhelmingly magnificent in order to capture the magnificence of creation and the absolute wonder of creation. And when you're walking in there, that's what it's designed to evoke. It's designed to evoke this unbelievable awe for the miracle of consciousness, for the miracle of existence, for the miracle that anything exists at all, that even an atom exists is a miracle. And that's what these temples, they're almost designed to teach you the principle that they're built about. And you know, like you see these ankhs everywhere you look, they're ankhs, life, 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 the symbol of life, the symbol of life. Beloved God gives life. Wherever you look, there are messages like that. And that for me was completely amazing, because I was expecting when I walked in there that this would be about the history of ancient Egypt and this pharaoh and that pharaoh. But it's not. On these temple walls are hieroglyphs describing the nature of consciousness and the nature of human being, what it means to be a human being. And so you get these very, very powerful illuminations from being there. Let me just find my presentation again. Sorry, there we go. So going back here, the thing that really amazed me about this was that there's a relationship between the different temples. So this is the temple at Karnak, and this is the temple to consciousness, to creation, to the universe, to the gods. And this relationship, if you went there without knowing, you would think, oh my God, this is totally amazing. But you wouldn't know that it has a relationship with the temple of Luxor down the Nile River. And what used to happen is that every year, the statue of Amun-Re, who symbolizes consciousness, was taken out of this temple and in ceremony taken upstream, up the Nile River, to the temple of the human being, which is built in the form of a human being, laid out. The architecture matches to a human body. And the statue of consciousness, the statue of Amun-Ra, symbolizing consciousness, was taken there and into the room, their whole section of rooms of different parts of the human mind. There's the room of the vocal cords, the mouth, the optic nerve, the third eye. So the whole top section of the temple in the layout symbolizes the human elements of human consciousness. And they would take that statue of that god from the temple of the god down the Nile River upstream into the temple of the human, symbolizing the way in which almost a piece of God arrives in our mind, in our awareness, and that we are illuminated by the same quality of awareness that permeates consciousness itself in the whole universe. So it really gets you to appreciate the miraculousness of what's in here as consciousness, the absolute miracle of consciousness. And science, we don't understand what it is. We don't understand what consciousness is. But the Egyptians appreciated this, the miracle of the fact that we have it. and built these temples in relationship to one another to show how mind-blowing consciousness itself is. So the statue comes and lives there. And when I was walking around these temples with Robert, the thing that blew me away most of all is that so many of the other teachings that I've encountered in my life, and I'm, doing a postgraduate degree in comparative religion, so I've kind of lived in a lot of different cosmologies my whole life, that all of these different spiritual systems that I've been exposed to are indebted to ancient Egyptian thinking. So here is the picture of the tree of life in Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And there you have this connection between the world of spirit and the world of matter. And Dept is the symbol of knowledge or gnosis, which is revelatory knowledge. And it's a combination of wisdom and understanding and the kind of light of pure awareness coming together in human awareness. So Egypt helps you to appreciate so many things that come from very many different spiritual traditions. In these temples in Egypt, things start just coming together in terms of some of the mysteries that human beings have been grappling with for a very, very long time. And I just got the sense when I was there that they understood this stuff in an incredibly refined and sophisticated way. And that a lot of what has come after is basically plagiarism. Like I've studied a lot of Christianity and Islam and the Kabbalah. And when Robert was explaining the stuff to me, I was standing there, oh my God, oh no, this is where it comes from. Oh no, this is this. I felt like I was finding the original version of Kabbalah, the original version of Christianity, the original version of Islam. It was all there. Robert was laughing at me because I wasn't coping with the amazingness of the teachings. But also about, what is our awareness for? Why? What is our awareness for? What is consciousness? And in this slide, in Enneagram terms, awareness is about seeing things as they are, hopefully, seeing truth, being able to discern, being able to let reality be reflected in our mind in a way that isn't distorted by our own fears. You know that the head center is the fear center, and fear is in our minds. Fear is always in our minds. It's an anticipation of something that's going to happen. So how do we develop our minds in such a way as they can be a pure reflection of what is and not distorted by our fear and our anxiety? And there were some beautiful quotes that came my way there, and it's called consilience, when different knowledge says the same thing. So in Islam, one of the hadiths that same man quoted, who said all the paths, the guy who said this, the ways to God are as numerous as the breaths of living beings. He also said in the head center, what we're trying to do is see things as they really are. Oh Lord, let me see things as they are. That is the prayer of point 6. That is the prayer of point 5, 6, and 7, is how do we see things as they are? How do we arrive in the world with open awareness? In Zen Buddhism, they talk about the smooth lake at night can perfectly reflect the moon. But if the water is rippled, it can't. Only the smooth river, only the smooth lake can give a perfect reflection. So our job in the head center is to still our mind so that we can attain some measure of objectivity and clarity. And that's very different to judgment. So if you look at in the other traditions, like in Buddhism, it's very much about this clarity of awareness, and the ability to discern subtle phenomena that are hard to detect. So if our awakened awareness, if our consciousness is online, we've got access to much more information. So when sixes are very healthy, they're unbelievably intuitive and very often psychic. So Helen Palmer, psychic. Tom Condon teaches intuition. He's scarily psychic. And these are sixes in a state where they've learned to make their mind open rather than cluttered up with fear. Sevens have to stop letting their mind hook onto everything around them and the next. Let the mind unhook from all of that and bring it back to I'm here now and what's happening here now. Very different things are found in that empty, still, mindful presence. So true mind in these teachings is this empty, still, non-attached state of awareness. And there's a difference between judgment and reactivity that comes from judgment and this state of open consciousness. So what I'm seeing in the Enneagram teachings as well is a shift away from talking about types, like 5 is like this, 6 is like this, 7 is like that, to teaching about awareness itself, which for me is actually what the Enneagram is about. The Enneagram is about 3 centers of intelligence and what do they look like when they're healthy. And in corporates, it works very well to talk like that. It's like we've all got a brain. What does it look like when it's working properly? It's open. You're able to be curious because it's not in a mess, busy with, being completely obsessed with your little gizmo as a 5 or worrying as a 6 or 7 or scattered. What is presence of awareness? And what can we do with our awareness? Because presence, we're always talking about presence. It comes from where we place our mind. So what Russ Hudson was emphasizing again there in Egypt was all inner work is the development of attention. And that for me is so crucial because a lot of us in the spiritual work and in healing work and in relational work, we dismiss the importance of the mind because we know that it's really about the heart, that love is in the heart and that we want to live from the heart. But we forget that we can't come and live in the heart if we haven't trained our mind. It's the mind that needs training. It's the mind that needs development of attention. If you want to become present, you can't do it without an act of awareness, an act of attention, an act of thought to say, now I'm going to become present. Now I'm going to place my mind on my experience in a particular way. So we can place our attention in one way or another way, and we can train our attention. So that's what's becoming clearer and clearer to me in the Enneagram world, is that we need to get away from typology into an awareness of training our attention. And another thing that was said at the conference that also struck me, inner peace is a shift of awareness away. And it's the same thing. It's all saying the same thing. Is that when we become aware of the gift of awareness and what it makes available to us, we can start training our awareness in particular ways to let go of certain thoughts. We can live in ourselves in a different way. There are multiple meditations where you can notice where your mind is now, and then you can pull it back. So you can pull your consciousness back to the back and the top of your head. And imagine you looking out from there rather than where you were looking out from. You can pull your awareness right back into the back of your being almost. Pull yourself back away from your experience and center yourself differently. So all of these are acts of the intentional placement of awareness. If you're sitting opposite a client in a coaching session, you can point your awareness at them in a very piercing way. You can look at them in their eyes in a very piercing way. That's almost accusing, like, are we going to get through your defense mechanism of pride today, or your defense mechanism of denial today? You can point your awareness like laser beams at them, or you can choose to have a different kind of awareness. You can choose to look at them in more of a soft focus, where you look at them and you look at the cloud around them, almost as if you can see their aura and it's soft, and that you can almost see through their skin and you can see their heart. So you can choose what kind of awareness to place on your clients as well. So once we realize the gift of our intentional awareness, and that it can be informed by understanding, and it can be informed by wisdom, then our pure consciousness comes together with those things in a way that we start being able to see the world differently, and different things start being made manifest to us, that different things are illuminated. And in all of these different traditions, consciousness is named as a light. It's a light of awareness. It's a beam of light that shines on things and makes them visible. So we've got a beam of light of awareness in us, that we're able to shine in certain ways, in certain places. So even if we do practical little exercises like what Annie did with us earlier, like say we go back there, we say, okay, now place the light of your awareness on the soles of your feet. You could do that in a second. You can place your awareness on the places in your body where you're touching the chair, where you're touching your clothing. You can place your awareness on subtle movements in your abdomen as you breathe. And this inner work trains us to do these different things with our awareness. So there's a practice that John Vervaeke teaches, the cognitive scientist, where he says, you take your awareness into the tiniest movement in your abdomen that you can find as you breathe. And you explore that, not with the point of awareness, but a soft awareness, just noticing the sensation. And then you take your awareness from there and you expand it outwards, 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 until you're aware of the whole cosmos, the vastness of the cosmos. And then you pull your awareness back in, to this tiny sensation moving in your abdomen. And you stay with it and you explore it with a kind of mindful, gentle gratitude, compassion. And notice that you can place your awareness compassionately. You know how to do that. And then you can expand it outwards again. So nothing that I'm saying is shocking to anybody, because you know that you can do it. You know that if I say, well, you can't choose not to. If I say, think of a baby donkey, you're going to think of a baby donkey. Think of Alpha Centauri or some constellation or the planet Mars. Your mind can go anywhere at any time. Your mind can go anywhere. And generally in our Enneagram type, our mind is going somewhere without us choosing where to take it, what to put it on. So what the Enneagram teaches us is, where am I placing my awareness? 5, 6, and 7, the types tell us where we are placing our awareness. And those places are not that illuminated, open awareness. 5s are placing their awareness on what can they figure out. 6s are placing their awareness on, oh no, what's going to go wrong? And 7s are placing their awareness on anything they can. So the Enneagram is describing a distorted state of awareness. And what Egypt teaches us is that the light of pure awareness, the true nature of it, is pure consciousness. So the Enneagram is teaching us what we've lost. And then, so I'm going to leave any questions until the end, okay? Then the other thing that really stood out for me in Egypt was the unbelievable intelligence around the geometry, the science of the world. The world is a manifestation of laws. The positioning of the pyramids, the positioning of the temples, the numbers of things. So if you look at sacred geometry, you can't, numbers don't lie, they add up. The not numerology, the patterns in the Enneagram are incredibly consistent. And it's the same thing with the temples in Egypt, that when you go there, you discover that, let me just see how I've set this out so I can focus on one thing at a time. Yeah, let me focus on this one first. So what you discover in Egypt is the Egyptians knew that there's a universal intelligence going on, that nothing is out of place, that everything is in perfect cycles. There's a symmetry, there's an intelligence to the way things are. And they got this from watching nature. So they saw the cycles of the planets, of the constellations, of the sun and the moon and the seasons. And they saw the regularity and they saw the patterns in nature. And on that basis, they understood that there is a single universal force manifesting itself in various forms, and that the universe itself is made of balance, order, truth, and stability. And this is symbolized by the goddess Maat, and she is the goddess of balance and harmony. And if you look at the Enneagram, it's this whole symbol is about balance and harmony and integration and unity. And the goddess Maat is all of the qualities of 9, is this stability that unites everything. And when the balance is out, there is chaos in the world, and that would lead to the demise of the world and the victory of chaos. So what we're looking at here is this fundamental archetype of order versus chaos. And the Enneagram also describes that, you know, in the laws of 7 and 1 and 3, we're looking at how to establish harmony and balance and to integrate polarities and to express this beauty of truth and order and stability. So in Egypt, in the temples, not one single thing is out of place. Nothing is accidental. So every building expresses harmony and order and stability and truth, which is why you can walk into a temple and you can start having insights. You can start having realizations, because the temple itself is teaching you certain laws. So I know so little about this because I've only just, started discovering that it's even there. But this is the kind of thing that Russ Hudson is teaching when he's on his tours, is about showing how the temple is teaching the laws. And it's all there. These symbols from ancient Egypt, like this, it's called the tetractys. There's genius maths in it. And you discover things like they used to pretty much worship this symbol, not in a primitive way that we might imagine. Like in our history of ancient Egypt, it often sounds like, we think people were superstitious. But it wasn't superstition. What they were doing was recognizing a sacred law. And it's like like Christians would say, I swear on the Bible. They would say, I swear on the tetractys, because this symbol contains such clear laws that it's able to teach us so many things. Like the Enneagram, too. I mean, we could probably say, I swear on the Enneagram, because we know that it contains principles and laws that are eternal and that describe certain cycles of change. And the more you work with the Enneagram, the more you're going to start to trust the intelligence of the symbol itself. So out of this, what I can say is make it your business to spend time on the symbol. Get yourself an Enneagram symbol, print it out, and go and stand on it, sit on it, walk it, spend time on it, because it teaches you itself. If you go and sit on point 9, for example, just imagine yourself sitting on point 9. You're able to see there's a path to 6 and there's a path to 3. You can see that if you look straight ahead, there's a path out of the Enneagram between 4 and 5. And as you start learning more about the Enneagram, you can start understanding more and more about what that means. But there's nothing like learning, sitting there, realizing that these are real potentials from each point. You'll discover so much more about the Enneagram doing that. Things come to life. It becomes obvious. A lot of things just suddenly become obvious when you inhabit them as realities. So this is another thing that is becoming clearer and clearer to me, and even more so because of Egypt, was that the Enneagram almost shouldn't be on paper, because it's describing processes and realities that are very material, that are very much in us and in our bodies. So because these are part of the kind of cosmic order. And so what Ma'at is describing, this balance and harmony, order and truth, it's about right action. So at point 9, we've got right action. Ma'at, we've got harmony and balance and goodness and truth. And what it represents is all that is right and necessary for the right course of things. And that's all the stuff that is in the body center. That's all the stuff that is 8, 9, and 1. Is what is the right thing to do? What is the good thing? What should be done? What needs to be done? So it's all about right action. And in ancient Egypt, Ma'at, the point 9 kind of symbol, is the proper functioning of institutions, the maintenance of social rules, and human morality. So it's all about right action. And in ancient Egypt, you can start understanding right action better by appreciating that heedless action in ancient Egypt was a disruption of cosmic order. So if you aren't acting mindfully, if you aren't doing right action, you're damaging the universe in a way. And for a long time, I've thought about that as part of the property of point 9, is that point 9s need to realize that they're here in the world as part of the fabric of goodness. They've got a role to play in creating the fabric of goodness. In Judaism, we call it tikkun olam, repairing the world. Everybody's got a role to play in repairing the world, in making the world more whole, more integrated, more in relationship to God. And 9s forget that they have a role to play in tikkun olam, in repairing the world. They neglect their kind of sacred duty to be part of the goodness of reality. Whereas 8s overdo it, driving their own agenda, and 1s overdo it in a different way by trying to stick to a pre-formulated set of rules, which is not necessarily the right thing for the right moment and those people present. So what Ma'at is about is this understanding that right action is about an understanding of being grounded in goodness, grounded in harmony, balance, order, what's needed to create create well-functioning institutions and rules and personal morality. So if you're going to choose right action from that place, where you appreciate the interconnectedness of everything in a system, and that you want to build something really good and sustainable, that's good for the collective, then you're going to act in right action, and you're going to appreciate the interconnectedness of everything is holy love. So that's really what the ancient Egyptian understanding of order and chaos and love and balance and harmony can teach us about what it means, what right action means. Right action means, are you building harmony, goodness, stability, and order through your actions? Are you contributing to that in your actions? So what these buildings try and express is that. So you'll never find something out of place in one of the temples, because they are demonstrating what they're teaching in the way that they're built. And the way that this resonates with the other teachings that I've been exposed to, Kabbalah, Islam, and Buddhism, is that right action in Christianity, there's so much, but just to give a tiny little joining of the dots, a tree is known by its fruit. The fruit of what we do, what we produce, what do we bring into the world? If you think about the metaphor of fruit, it's the life force of the tree gives rise to the fruit. The life force is what's grounded in the earth. It's very much our materiality that brings something forth. And this is where it happens in Kabbalah, is in the world of the manifest. So for the Egyptians, the manifest world is absolutely crucial. It's not like there's earth and heaven. They are completely connected. The manifest world is a manifestation of divinity, and it's our job on earth to contribute to the maintenance and the tending of this earth. So one of the negative confessions, which is something you have to say when you die in ancient Egyptian religion, is I didn't do that, I didn't do that, I didn't do that. Some of them are things like, I never defiled the water. I never polluted anything. There's this incredible respect for nature and reverence for nature, and an awareness of our absolute embeddedness in nature. So that was one of the things that really blew me away, is that it's kind of quantum physics before quantum physics, is an understanding of this embeddedness in materiality. In Islam, it's also the sense of responsibility. Kabbalah spoke a bit about that. Tikkun olam means repairing the world. So in the world of the manifest, it's the kind of instantiation of God is here, right here, and we're part of it. And our role is to connect heaven and earth again. We're here to maintain the connection between heaven and earth and not let things go into chaos. So that was some of my insight about holy love and right action, from understanding something about the concept of Ma'at, the goddess of order and balance and harmony. And that the Enneagram is really about that. It's really about balance and harmony. I know in Renata's teaching about the polarities, the integration of the polarities is what leads to a kind of enlightened consciousness, where you're able to constantly be balancing. So that was stuff about the 0.9 and right action, that it's about our responsibility to kind of tend the earth, to tend order, to tend harmony, to make a contribution in this world towards truth, I'd say tending truth is the word I'd like to use. But most astonishingly, the sacred geometry that came out of ancient Egypt, that recognizes the interconnectedness of all things. And this is where I think our Western science for all its genius, lost the plot in taking science almost out of nature and doing things in isolation, rather than seeing that every single thing we do has ramifications for the whole of the earth, for the whole of the planet, and that you can't tinker with one thing without disrupting something else. So the Egyptians were incredibly aware of the interconnectedness of all life, of all matter, and the fact that we are inseparable from nature. So that is on the material level. To sum it up, order, harmony, and intelligence in things, and an interconnectedness. And then when we get to the heart, really understanding here, and I know some of you already know quite a bit about this, but the heart center being about who or what am I really? I should have said ages ago, Kemet was the word for ancient Egypt. And in ancient Egyptian religion, it was very clear to them that the soul resides in the heart. And the heart plays the most important central role in our spiritual conscience, in our spiritual existence. That's why when someone does something terribly cruel, we say to them, you're heartless. All our metaphors tell us, where is conscious? It's in our heart. The ancient Egyptians were very aware of this, and when they mummified bodies, they especially wrapped up the heart so that it could be protected on its journey through the underworld after death. And when a person died, the cosmotheology, psychotheology is that the person's heart gets weighed against the feather of Ma'at. So the goddess Ma'at that I spoke about, I should have had a nicer picture of her here. She's always depicted with a feather in her headdress. In the Egyptian judging of the soul after death, on the day of, well, like the day of judgment in other religions, the individual soul is judged against the feather of Ma'at, and the heart is weighed against that feather. So what is the condition of your heart? That is how it is evaluated. So this goddess of harmony and order and balance and justice is, did you live in accordance with those principles? Did you commit sins that violated the principles of order and justice and harmony and balance? So the heart was said to be weighed against this feather when we die. And if the heart successfully balanced against the feather, then the person's soul would be taken to paradise. If we failed the test because our heart is impure and weighted with sin, then we would be devoured by a kind of monstrous God that symbolizes restlessness and agony in the underworld. So you can see how important this is, that the consciousness, the right action, and how it is in our heart, that we have to find this balance in ourselves so that we can be found pure of heart and true of voice. That's ultimately what we're going for. And when you compare it with Kabbalah, what's very interesting is that you've got spirit at the top, the manifest world at the bottom, and the very middle is Tiferet, which is the heart. And that is the point of connection between the lower world, the manifest world, and the consciousness of God that comes through the mind into the heart. So this heart being absolutely central to our spiritual existence. And that echoes every other spiritual tradition. It's just that what happens with the Egyptian stuff, being there and seeing it, is that it gives so much substance in the temples and in the experience of being there to so many of these other ideas. And what just became obvious to me is how much how many of these other ideas came from there, specifically Christianity, Kabbalah, and Islam, because they come from the same root. Pythagoras and Plato and Socrates all studied in ancient Egypt. So we think Western philosophy started in ancient Greece. It didn't. It comes from ancient Egypt. So all of our ideas about a three-centered being and having an animal nature and an elevated consciousness and different parts of the self, and that there's a true self and a false self, and there's a self that's seduced by the external world that's different from the true self. All of that comes from ancient Egyptian kind of psychology and cosmology. All of those ideas that we think start in ancient Greece or start in Christianity or Judaism have much older roots. So for me, that was really mind-blowing, because I've been, I really love these spiritual traditions. I love their teachings. But then when you go and find out that, 3,000 years before, they were already being explored in an earlier form, it's very, very wonderful and beautiful to realize that, in this very sophisticated, philosophical, spiritually evolved civilization, they were mapping out these things of what are we made of? How do we go wrong? What is the good life? What does it mean to be a good person? What does it mean to be truthful? What does it mean to be what you really are spiritually? So they were exploring these questions in different ways. And then, their answers got taken and incorporated in other philosophies. So I'm not saying, Buddhism is derived from ancient Egyptian at all. I just put it here, and Hinduism, because I like them a lot. And because there is consilience, there is consistency in many of these understandings. So in Christianity, it's all about valuing. The heart is about valuing. What do you value? What do you choose? The heart is the deepest center of the person. It's the irreducible I of the unique human individual. And every single other thing in the human being flows from and depends on the heart. And it's the core of identity. So Christianity took this same idea on. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. These are all core aspects of our other philosophical tradition. In Islam, they speak about not killing the soul which God has made sacred. For me, that's so important, is that our heart can be killed. Our hearts can be dead. They can be empty. We can actually kill our own heart. And in Islam, the heart is the place of the threshold where there's a battle between spirit and ego. And in Islam, our heart is what is judged. So we could do terrible things in this life, but if we did them by accident, then we would not be held accountable for them. We are judged by the intention of the heart. And in Islam, the intention is and is only in the heart. That's where it is. You do not set an intention in your mind. Intention in your mind is a thought or a fantasy or an idea. True intention is in the heart. That's where our true conscience lives. So these are some of the incredible things that ancient Egypt sheds incredible light on these other teachings. But it's like it gets illuminated from below because it came first. In Buddhism, the heart also precedes everything. And suffering follows from the heart, or goodness follows from the heart. There's this wonderful poem here. I'll read it to you. Phenomena are preceded by the heart, ruled by the heart, and made of the heart. If you speak or act with a corrupted heart, then suffering follows you, as the wheel of the cart, the track of the ox that pulls it. phenomena are preceded by the heart, ruled by the heart, made of the heart. If you speak or act with a calm, bright heart, then happiness follows you like a shadow that never leaves. So these traditions concur. In Hinduism, we've got the heart chakra, which is called the Anahata chakra. And what's beautiful about that is that it is the place of equanimity. And it means the sound produced without touching two parts, which means that it's the sound that comes when you don't actually clang anything. Let's put it that way. It's about non-attachment. It's about equanimity within polarity. So it's not being attached one way or another. And the knowledge in Hinduism, and it's in these other traditions as well, that we can bring our awareness to it, the heart is able to integrate polarities. Things can be processed in the heart, and it is where things are processed. It's the only place that things are truly processed. So if you look at the heart in the scale in ancient Egypt, the heart is where you've done the processing of your life. So say you've lived your life and you've had a bad relationship, or you've done something terrible, or you've stolen, or you've done, or whatever, all the things you've done have left a kind of residue in your heart. And your heart is able to process that. It's the spiritual organ of transmutation and processing. And this is what Hinduism helps us understand, is that it's the heart that can integrate and process, transmute. And I think fours have a very special understanding of this revelatory and transmutational power of the heart. That if we can stay with what's happening in our heart, if we can stay close to it, if we can feel it without overanalyzing it, like a 4 does, without running away from it and chucking it aside like a 3 does, without forgetting what's there and having an agenda like a 2, if we can stay with what's actually happening with our own heart, then we can transform it, and we can attain this lightness of heart. Because when we do that work, we end up finding equanimity, because we notice the suffering of our own heart. We notice the suffering of unforgiveness. We notice the suffering of envy. So if we bring our awareness to our own experience that's happening real time, then we start being able to process our suffering. And when we've processed our suffering, we'll be able to become true to ourselves, forgive ourselves. Then our heart will be able to balance against the feather, because then we'll know ourselves in our heart. We'll know what's there. We'll know. We'll be able to see, oh, wow, that's envy, or, oh, that's my intention to earn positive regard. So in the heart-centered types, we get a sense of what are the challenges of our hearts. And in the vices of each of our types, we get a sense of the lower feeling of the heart center that we're grappling with. But I think what it's all telling us is kind of how to stay with ourselves. And that's kind of the main takeaway for me from these teachings is about this. It's really, really, really about this. It's these three areas of exploration that for me got deepened and amplified and illuminated by being in Egypt. And there were many more things that added to each of these. But I think this is my best way of condensing it. So I'm going to stop there, and maybe we can have a chat and talk and see what's landing for you or not. And if you want to ask anything, go ahead. I just need to close my window because we're about to have a huge storm here and it's already noisy. started hailing. Okay, so I'm going to leave this slide on because I think this gives us a lot of food for thought. Let's take questions. Annie, I want to come back to you because we've studied together a lot, and I know you've got all the trauma-informed lens and do a lot of beautiful circling work. So I'd love to ask you, like, what are your impressions? And then we go to Mana. I see your hands up, Mana.
Well, I'm just really, my impression is on my heart. I feel really moved by this. Yeah, pretty speechless. But the journey of at the very beginning and everything else that supported it around, sinking in or touching into what is our real experience, contacting experience without the filter of fear or any of the mind's tricks, and just that grief awareness, I guess, the grief recognition of how long we operate from not that, and from how, like, the grief recognition around, like, not being here and just really not having that is what I've been not dealing with, but just sitting with for this whole year, just like, oh, here I am, like, here's life right here. There's just been so it's just very affirming and powerful, and just I'm just so grateful for the images, in particular, the temple of it, yeah, that stability, the order, and why they represented that, why they did what they did, is just so powerful. So thank you so much. Yeah,
Absolutely. Thank you for that. It just hit me beautifully when you were saying it. Like, it makes me want to cry to hear this. I wasn't here, where, like, this thought about where was I? I wasn't here. I wasn't here. It's a very, very difficult thing for us to truly acknowledge how little of the time we are here. And specifically in relationship is where the pain hits most. Was I here? Was I here with my cat, with my dog, with my child, with my dying mother? How much was I here? And that's, for me, become the driving concern. And Gurdjieff said it. He said, we're only alive for maybe 5 minutes our whole life, because we're only alive when we're really here. So he said, life isn't real when I'm not. Something like that. I can't remember the exact word. But if I'm not here, my life is not real, and nothing's really alive. So the quest is to touch into our experience without the filters of our fear, our obsession, our selective attention. Like, if we're listening to someone speaking and we're listening for an opportunity to look good, or we're listening for when am I get an opportunity to turn them into a customer or something, you know what I mean? Like, we're often listening, waiting for an opportunity to get what our ego wants. Or we're not listening, we're waiting for them to shut up, we're resisting the person. Our ego is in that interaction, and it's preventing us from actually being there in our heart. So I love the way you spoke about filters, touching into experience versus filters, and the filters deaden us. So thank you for that. I find it incredibly moving, and that was my experience in these temples. Is, oh my God, this is what awareness is. And here's this absolute, in the temple of the human being and the temple of creation, you get the sense of a devotional quality that life is so precious, so very precious and sacred and beautiful. And human consciousness and the human heart is so precious and sacred that these things are like, if you're walking here, the temple is saying to you, wake up, wake up. Do you realize the absolute magnificence of creation and the miracle of your own life? That you have a fraction of a second of consciousness. Don't waste it. It's like the whole temple is shouting at you to wake up. And in different places, you experience different things. Like at the Temple of Hathor, every space has a different message. Every space is a different university of a different aspect of consciousness, of a different aspect of life. And that's, I was joking with Robert. I was saying, oh my God, I'm just going to stand in front of this pillar for a year because this is level 1. And then when I've graduated from this pillar, I'm going to go to that pillar because of the depth and the quality of the teaching about what it means to be alive. So I think you've totally nailed it there, Annie, in your way of describing this thing, of it getting to the heart of what does it mean to be here as a human being. Thank you so much for what you said.
Can I just quickly add one thing, Ingrid?
Yeah, please.
Just from the trauma-informed lens, like I just to know that won't kill you, to be present is the huge piece. So the sturdiness of the container to be present, because that's why we're not, I mean, if you have complex trauma, you're not present because it physically hurt or there's too much terror there. So to actually show up and contact reality, your job for whatever portion of your life that that you're in, you have to build that sturdiness so that you can kind of pass the threshold of terror into the contact and then inventory that. I was just thinking of if you inventoried the moments of presence that did not hurt, that were held this beauty, then you would have, I mean, I have way more than 5 minutes, right? So can we catalog those and then kind of inquire into, once we've made the sturdy container, can we then catalog those moments when we had that contact as a book of evidence to make us even more brave in a way, because I think if you looked in those moments of making love when you're so present, or the sunset, that you would find many more than 5 minutes where you were shoved into that through beauty or whatever. Yeah, just that positive frame, instead of when you're trying to heal from complex trauma or any trauma, it's you're doing too much inventorying of the pain to make sense of it. And this is yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for that. That's so wonderful. And also this thing of the inventory, when you speak about moments of presence that didn't hurt, when we realize that we can be safely embodied, it's when we begin to trust the sacred geometry of our own life and of the body and of our instincts and of nature. That's why people find nature so incredibly healing, because it's the times when we experience this incredibly beautiful coherence, when we're experiencing a trustworthy holding, a safety, that there is some intelligibility. And when we're sharing with other people who've experienced trauma, when people are unshamed in safe spaces, and they experience the presence that there's a continuity, that yes, we were harmed, but something beautiful was harmed. There is a something beautiful. There is a something good. There's an affirmation of goodness that comes there, that leads to that ability to come into contact with life. But it definitely comes through safety in the body, leads us to feel that we can be in touch with life in a way that we don't have to filter it all out. But thank you for that. So lovely. I love the way you express that. And if we've got time, I want to close with a resourcing exercise that speaks to exactly what you said. Mana? You're on mute.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful and such confirmation at this moment in so many ways. That matrix, when you started off, was just, it provided such a lot of clarity for me, although the intention legend I would change to clarity of intention versus unclarity of intention, which would make more sense for me, because
yes.
At the moment we have Lent, we go through Lent, and where I travel to, they're going through Ramadan, the fasting. And it's so strange that we spend this time reflecting much more deeply. And for me, I go to lots of different masses because I try and go a few times a week, and you get to experience different priests. And I've noticed quite substantially that the way the priest portrays Jesus's life, or you know, what religion is about, is it shapes your intention. So I've started a practice of literally trying to shape my own intention and not being sidelined by someone else's version of something. So, you know, each morning, or at least 3 times a day, you literally, you know, my life is joy and peace and love, and that is my intention, with no outcome, expectation of any outcome, just this is what it is, and I feel that feeling and embody that feeling. And it's amazing how much comes into your life when you set that intention like that. You get to experience joy in so many different forms. I'm not sure if it's because you now focused on it and are able to see the many little things that are happening to you, and many expressions of love that you get to experience. But for me, this really summed up a great deal for me, and it was really impactful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Lovely. Thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful. And it reminds me of Thich Nhat Hanh in one of his meditations, the Zen Buddhist teacher. He's so beautiful. He used to say, rather than seeking happiness, be a generator of happiness. Rather than seeking joy, you are here to produce happiness. So walk around the world being a happiness factory. And I sometimes find that so helpful. Like if I go down a spiral, I start freaking out and whatever, to just, rather than seeking happiness, no, today I'm going to make happiness. That's my job for today. It's like with my little happiness cement mixer. Whatever.
But thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Lovely. Okay, we've got a little bit of time. Teresa, we've got a question. Anything you want to say?
Hello, Ingrid. Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the pictures. As you know, I was in Egypt the same time as you, and equally fascinated by the country. And one of the things that landed with me this time is the purpose of life, your intention for life. And it was reflecting on the Egyptians believing, you know, our body, our whole, our heart is a temporary residence for a soul. You know, the Egyptians believed in the bar and the car. And when you actually look at the purpose of your life, with the idea that they believed in, that there was a reincarnation or a recycling, is that this body that Teresa's got at the moment, this heart that she's got at the moment, is a residence for a soul. And how precious then life is, that and then when this physical body dies, that will, you know, that will leave and go on. So what strikes you is, as you say, when you're in Egypt, is how spiritual, how devoted, how they lived from this collective point, not from the individual, not from the point of the individual. It was,
Yeah.
and it's just so difficult. I think it's relation to maybe your country of origin to understand, you know, to really understand that, you know, that the collectiveness of life is how it makes sense, not ever really from an individual point of view, but we have got this honor of being of holding a soul somewhere in our body.
Yeah, definitely. And also got that sense of love the body, like really love the body, love your own body, honor your.
Yeah, I was having this conversation with somebody this week who is my age, in her 60s, and actually getting into makeup for the first time. And we were saying that there was a point, like in the 70s and 80s, when we were in, you know, academics, that it was seen as sort of, you know, for females to be wearing makeup and fussing about your hair is sort of anti-intellectual. But it's more than that. It comes up through the sort of Christian tradition of being vain and things like that too, that thread. But what you saw in Egypt is beautification. Beautify, you know, beautify, adorn yourself, you know, the hair, the jewels, the makeup. It wasn't from a vanity point, it was this adoration, beautification, you know, everything, even the back of everything is beautified, because things are done from love. So there is no back and front, so the back is just as adorned as the front, whereas maybe in our culture we'd do the front because that's going to be seen by others, but the back would be left.
The user experience interface.
Yeah, but when you're doing it for love and for devotion, then it's not for the eyes of man. And therefore, even if it's in the highest top corner, it would be beautified. So yeah, I think beautification, again, is that rejoicing, you know, rejoicing for that short time that we're here.
Thank you. Yeah, that's lovely. It's actually so interesting that you mentioned that, because I really picked that up experientially as well. Like in the Temple of Hathor, they were so aware of the senses and the importance of the senses. Like there's a room in the Temple of Hathor that is a perfume laboratory. And there was such a consciousness of smell and working with aroma. And there was a sound temple, you know, the awareness of the importance of sound and a real valuing, like at the temple of the human being, you know, there's a room for the vocal cords, there's a room for the mouth, there's a room for the optic nerve. Everywhere we take in information, the smell, the hearing, this refined awareness of that is our interface with our human experience, and that as such there's incredible significance to it. So it was quite funny when I went to the Temple of Hathor. She was the goddess of a whole bunch of stuff, from astronomy to makeup. The deities there are really interesting. But when I came out of the Temple of Hathor, I went and wore a whole lot of makeup, which I hardly ever wear makeup, but then I did. Then it was in that kind of spirit, but I didn't think about it really. But now that you're saying it, it's just enjoying embodiment, being embodied, being in space. So it's like a very, very healthy version of self-praise in Egyptian cosmology. Like we're really here. So let's be here, and let's be here with our full selves, with love. Yeah. Anyone else want to say anything? But thanks for that, Teresa. Anyone else want to comment or say anything? How is it for you, Deborah? I'm asking you because you're relatively newer to the Enneagram than some other people here. I know Renata told me you fell down the rabbit hole last year, and how is it for you hearing this?
Ingrid, I just want to notify that Don did put up his hand as well for
Oh,
after.
sorry. Okay, after you, Deborah.
Okay, I'll go quickly. I think I'm just fascinated. I'm really fascinated by all these religious traditions. But I think the picture that's sitting really close to me is the one you have on screen. Because it's really what the Enneagram is about. And, you know, often what I find is that I've learned more about the Enneagram since my level 1 training, through the opportunity to work with others in the community of community of practice, reading, you know, I'm in the book club, that kind of thing.
Oh.
So, you know, the level 1 training just gives you the elements. And I actually wonder if we should even be training, if we should be giving feedback if we've only done level 1 training, because it hasn't got the depth. Yeah. So this has been wonderful, and just helping with the depth of my own journey, particularly my own journey, but helping others with what they're searching for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm glad that it wasn't, you know, overwhelming, because
No,
focus
not at all.
on the 3 centers. You know, if people have been exposed to the Enneagram of personality as a tour around the 9 types, as they often have, then, you know, this type of teaching is sometimes a bit alien. So I'm really grateful that it wasn't. Thank you. Yeah. And Don?
You're on mute. Still on mute, Don. I know you're probably trying to find the unmute button. It's harder on a cell phone. We can wait.
Yeah,
You're
you see the fingers
still
going towards the button.
You're still on mute, Don.
We're giving up on you, Don.
Okay, keep fiddling. Maybe it'll. You had it earlier on today.
Executive override powers.
Oh, there I am.
There we go. Now don't touch anything, just talk.
Okay. So do you find that all the religions that you've studied distort the truth of their religion as much as the Western ones? Or what has been your experience that people ego attached to the religions, and was there more clarity around that in Egypt, or is there always the need to attach your ego to I have the truth and the only truth? Or how did that?
I have absolutely no idea what it was like to live in ancient Egypt, but I'm pretty sure there was some narcissistic, bullshitty priest somewhere being abusive, like we have always forever. So I'm sure that personality played its part, and in their cosmology, it is about that, you know, like your heart is either pure or it isn't, and it's either given over to the lower elements of the psyche, the animal part of us, or it's strived for harmony, balance, and order. So I think that's pretty universal. And if I'm understanding you correctly, is it like a universal feature of every religion that there's the human ego side and the pure mystical enlightenment side? Maybe you can help me with that.
Well, I think I liked what you said about the heart being the tuning of the where are you in the center. And I think you said it was Islam that was saying if you have a pure heart, you're okay, even if you screw it up. And I was wondering, you know, that was like, because I see so often that the heart is not connected to the spirit world. And obviously the Enneagram gives you a roadmap to sort of see where am I most likely to make this distortion. So I was just curious if you had seen any examples where there were some religions or some people that were getting it, seemed to be distilling it. And it sounds like from ancient Egypt, your experience there, that you were really impressed with their level of consciousness and that they had distilled some major truth from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think all religion that I've ever been exposed to has got exquisite, pure truths. It is at the level of ego when it becomes about our fears and power and being impressive or whatever our ego is trying to pull off, that we lose the plot around what we really are. And that's particularly why I put two people here at the three, because we've got an idealized ego image that we're trying to feed. And then somewhere deeper down, there's this aspect of us that doesn't care about identity, doesn't have an identity, and kind of knows what we're really made of. And I think it's just the human condition that in every religion, there are these beautiful, pure truths, and then there are the human teachers that fall very, very short of exemplifying them. I mean, many of the teachers I quote, you know, like Muji, sexual abuser, you know, just to name one of hundreds of examples, that these teachings, the people who teach them are not above falling short of the teachings. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm on the same page as you, Don. Am I saying?
Yeah, this is exactly what I'm trying to distill. And thank you for this wonderful presentation. It was really fascinating, and gosh, it was so beautiful to hear your expression of it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Yeah, so we're at time now. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else. I'm always happy to stay for a little bit extra. Renata, if you've got to go, you can make me post, and I can stay for a bit and chat and connect.
Yeah, so for those who want to stay, and otherwise, thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful to spend time in community and learning, and thanks, Ingrid, for your generosity as always, and for the beautiful presentation. That was so interesting and fascinating. Yeah, lovely to see you all. Don Hudson is in the room, is doing a presentation for us on the 27th of April on enlightenment and the Enneagram. And we're hoping that he'll do something on neuroscience and the Enneagram later in the year when the research is complete. But yeah, love you all madly. And for those who can stay, let's chat. Otherwise, adios, amigos.
Everyone. Yeah, good. Anyone else want to ask anything before you hop off?
I just wondered, Ingrid, what you were, before you hit time, you said you were going to do a closing of some kind, and I was curious what that was. I mean, if you want to, I'm just curious what you're going to choose.
If anybody wants to stay, I wanted to do this resourcing and resource intensification exercise because you were speaking there about moments of presence that didn't hurt. And that really touched me. And I thought, oh, let's do something with that. Let's do something with the moment of presence that didn't hurt. And to just do this little exercise, if you want to do it, doesn't take long at all. But it's from one of my little trauma resource kits. And it says, a resource can be a positive characteristic, a good memory, a place, person, an animal, a spiritual guide, or anything that provides comfort, joy, peace, or happiness. So now we can build our resources by asking ourselves, what is it right now in my life that brings me strength and or joy? So right now in my life, what is bringing me strength or joy? I'll give you a minute to write it down if you want to. You can just visualize it.
Ingrid, can you stop sharing screen so I can see folks?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so asking yourself then, what is it right now in my life that brings me joy or strength? And then describing in your mind to yourself, whether it's a person, a place, an animal, an activity, whatever it is that's sustaining and nurturing you right now. So just pick one of them. And now describe 3 aspects of that resource to yourself. 3 aspects. And notice how good it feels to be thinking about it and spending a little bit of extra time taking this awareness and wrapping your awareness around this thing that you love. And then as you describe your resource to yourself, then start bringing your awareness to the sensations that are pleasing to you about your resource. So when you go back to your description, what do you feel inside yourself as you reflect on the resource? Notice your breathing. I'm noticing myself smiling. Notice your heart rate, your muscles. So what is it like for you as you reflect on this resource? And bring awareness to the changes since you began bringing your awareness to this thing, person, activity, whatever it is that gives you joy and strength. What's happened to you since you started making your mind go there? Do you notice any new feelings, thoughts, or sensations arising in you? Do you notice any new meanings arriving? And I invite you also to feel who you are when you feel this joy or strength in relation to this resource. What is the resource bringing out in you? And what can you enjoy about yourself as you're thinking about this resource? What are the feelings and the things about yourself that you can enjoy? And now, as we bring an end to this practice, just bringing your awareness to your whole body and notice all the changes that have occurred since we began. And know that you bring this resource with you and you bring these feelings with you, inside you. As you come back into the room, you bring these feel-good feelings with you. So I see that as a moment of presence that didn't hurt. What do you say, Annie?
Yay. Thank you so much. Like bonus. So lovely. Thank you.
Oh, sweet. Would anyone like to share what they thought of? I always feel FOMO about other people's wonderful things.
I'm boring. I always just think of my daughter. She's my biggest and bestest resource.
It's amazing, hey? Yeah.
Delight.
I don't want to hog the mic, but I seem to be the one that always wants to share today for some reason. But yeah, for me, grandkids, it's just so fascinating to watch them actually develop and watch how they can do things. It's the most purest form of love that you will ever have.
Oh
It's
no.
so refreshing, just literally sitting on the floor because you want to be eye level and just communicating without saying a word, watching
Wow.
the joy, the way they experience life with this unfiltered, this joy. It's really such a resource.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you. So you discover this, Granny, in yourself.
Yes, but they are one and two.
Beautiful. I'm jealous. My son
Your
turned
time
30
will come.
yesterday. Yeah, my son turned 30 and I'm like, I'm going to say it. I'm not going.
Can't wait to have grandchildren. Also jealous, Mona. Love little people.
Oh, they're so cute.
Oh.
Yeah.
You get to
and
see the world in a different way, as in how you actually able to portray an intention in their own minds, but out of pure love. It's just so different.
thank you. Yeah.
Oh, Steph's written a message in the chat. Steph's resource is clay in your shed. Love that, Steph. Tell us. Are you trying to show us what's going on?
I went and did some pottery at Steph's house last week. It was so wonderful. Beautiful. So lovely. Yeah. Thank you. Catherine, what's your resource? Don't want to talk. No.
I have to go and walk my dog, so I'm going to sign out. Love you all.
Yeah, I'm also going to go and walk myself. I don't have a dog. My cat's going to go walking.
Lots of love.
Okay, everybody.
Lots of love, everyone.
It was
Bye.
lovely to see
Thank
you.
you,
Thanks so
Ingrid.
much.
Thanks, Renata.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye.
you so much. Bye.